and welcome to another video. This one will be on installing the gauges that I have here on the van. I've gotten a lot of requests and questions on putting these in. There are many different ways of setting up gauges in your vehicle. This is just one of those ways. This is the one that I chose and it has been working for me. I'm going to be changing the way I connect some of these because I will be adding an oil cooler to my 1.9 engine. But up until now, this setup has been working really well. The other thing I want to mention is when you put these gauges in is to use them for overall knowledge, but not to take them as the main information that you're getting from your engine. So what I mean is I haven't gone through and checked the accuracy of every single one of these. So let's say, for example, the oil temperature one, I have not gone back to the engine, let's say after a hill climb, and made sure that the temperature with a heat gun on the engine is exactly the same as what my gauge has told me. What I'm using the gauges is more of just for following patterns. I still use the regular cluster from the van, the original information, as that's the main information the van is telling me. These gauges just help me monitor what's going on, but I'm not really going by exactly the numbers that each one is saying. So this is what I chose to use. One of the previous owners installed a TAC, which is super helpful. And then I decided to add an oil temperature gauge, an oil pressure gauge, and a water temperature gauge. Before I decided which ones to use, I did a ton of research, and I also lined up with one of the ways that I had set up a gauge before on my motorcycles a long time ago. But forums like the Samba, and there's just lots of information out there online, and also on YouTube. If you do a search for step-by-step on how to install these, there's lots of really great guides. But the one that stood out to me in the way that I wanted to do it was VanAgain has a really great package and great video on the install for the oil pressure gauge. So if you want it all wrapped up in a package where he has every single thing listed and you just get it all together, you're able to install it, especially if you follow his video, which I'll link over here, by the way. That way you don't have to worry about getting the right pieces or the things that will match. Or for me, I use his approach, but I got all the different elements separately so that I could pick and choose what I wanted to use. But I did go with the option of using a sandwich adapter on the oil filter. So that way, out of that sandwich adapter, I was able to pull out oil pressure and oil temperature. So the sandwich adapter is GlowShift, and then for the cooling line, I also used a GlowShift adapter. It's an inline adapter that I mounted where it's a system that routes through the heater cores. Because I live in such a warm place, I removed the rear heater. And when I removed that, I put in bypasses so that my hoses sending the coolant to the front heater would go straight through. And so what I did is in one of those pass-throughs, I used that GlowShift inline adapter instead. So what I like about that is I'm getting the information and the temperature of the coolant that's coming right off of the head as it's going to try to flow forward to the front heater. It's up to you to decide where within the entire system you want to pick up that temperature. It's just keep in mind where it is compared to what the system is doing. So for example, let's say you get the temperature right off of the radiator. That's not going to be the real temperature that you're going to have by the engine, because if it's after the thermostat, that means you're only seeing the temperature of the system once the thermostat opens and sends it over to the radiator to cool things down. So that's why I chose to mount mine off of that hose that's right off of the head. So my regular temperature gauge is still my most important dial, but by having my temperature gauge off of the head in that particular location, it's as if I'm getting a second opinion of what's happening with the cooling system in general. So as I said before, I use it for reference, but I still go through my main gauge as the most important one. So for all of these, to hook them up, you're going to need power to them. And the way they're getting power right now is on key ignition on. That's when they kick on. That's the main power that's going to them. You're going to need a ground, obviously, for all of them. they're going to get either 1 or 2 cables, depending on how advanced they are, that is going to allow them to light up, let's say at night. The tach doesn't need to light up during the day. You can see it really well, but it's connected the same way the dashboard is. When you turn on the lights, it sets it up so that you can see it at night. So for the 3 that I've installed, they're hard to see without any lighting. So they come with a couple of different cables, so you can set up different color combinations depending on what you want to do. So I set them up so that during the day they turn white, and then at night when I turn on the lights, they turn orange to match the rest of the dashboard. And that's really clear in the instructions how to set that up. They usually make it so that it's 2 or 3 different cables that you'll set them up with. The main if you want them to be white, you put 1 cable to the main power so that anytime they have power, they just turn to that particular color. And then there's another wire that is set up so that you can have it attached to your lights or dashboard or however it is you want to set that up, that when you put power to that, it'll change to the color you want. And then each one of them will just have a 3rd lead, and that will be the signal lead that will be routed to wherever it is you mounted on your system. So the tach that came installed by a previous owner is from Equius. It's a Pro tach, and it's been working really well, so I'm just not going to touch that. That is routed through along with the harness, and it's connected to the coil. So when the coil is giving its signal to the engine, the tach picks up on that and is able to tell you RPM. The oil temperature and pressure are both being routed to the sandwich adapter under the filter. And then the water temperature is routed to an inline adapter that is going from the passenger side head over to what would have been the heating cores. These 3 gauges are all Prosport, just regular 52 millimeters. And I'll put all of the information below in the description if anybody is interested in finding out more. If you were to get the package from VanAgain, you would get the oil pressure gauge, which would be, I believe, very similar to this middle one I got. Along with the sandwich adapter and everything else, and the wiring and everything else you need to make it from the engine compartment routed over to here. And then this cluster box thing I used is also from GlowShift. I picked this 3 one because I knew these were the 3 that I wanted to use, and it seems to fit really well there. So it's been fantastic. So when I put it all together, it took me a couple of tries to make sure I had all the cables going to the right places. Make sure to label everything ahead of time so that you're sending the right signal wires to the right places. I use marine level wiring to connect everything from the back to the front. I ran it alongside the harness, and I made it come up through the front and into the gauges. If there's any questions, comments, I understand that this is not the only or best way to do it. It was a way of routing these and mounting them and connecting them that made sense to me. And it makes it easy for me to understand what's happening with the engine and the different systems. From what I've read, a lot of people feel like having extra gauges just makes you worry about everything that's happening. I worry all the time anyway, so having gauges and patterns to follow just makes sense to me. And I understand that the system is set up to work really well by itself. It doesn't need us to do anything extra. But because it is an old system and not everything in it is brand new, I might try to maintain it the best I can, but I will make mistakes. So being able to address those things on the fly just gives me a bit more comfort when I'm driving around. But other things too, this is a really warm climate, warmer than I've been used to, because I used to live in the northeast of the US and now we live in the south, and the change of temperature is definitely going to make a really big impact. I can see it in the way some of the temperatures behave, and being able to keep track of them and understand what's going on has been super helpful. Also with the sandwich adapter, I believe if you have a newer van or one of the larger engines, this is a 1.9, with the sandwich adapter, you have clearance to just move the oil filter down a little bit. Because I have the 1.9 with the stock exhaust, the oil filter does not fit if you use the extra space for the sandwich adapter. So I switched to a different filter that does fit perfectly and has been working great. So I'll just put the information here if you need that. So I hope that was helpful. If there are any comments, if there's any questions, anything you want to reach out, please do comment below. If there's anything that you feel I'm doing completely incorrectly, I will take any advice and information from anyone that wants to share. I understand that the way everyone does things is different. This setup has been working so far. The engine has been doing wonderfully this way. So I hope if you're thinking about doing something similar, this might give you some insight of different ways that it can be done. So subscribe if you'd like. I'm always trying to put these videos out. As always, with Kayak Hipster. Thank you for watching and see you next time.